Deals aren't lost in the close. They're lost in the first 10 minutes of the conversation, not because the offer is wrong, not because the pricing is too high, but because the call turns into an explanation instead of a diagnosis. So if you're doing most of the talking, you're trying to persuade, and persuasion is a weak position. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 6 questions that structure a call properly, so the prospect builds the case for working with you themselves. Let's talk about the purpose of a sales call in the first place. The call is not to explain the agency. The objective here is for you to start to guide the thinking, the problem, solution, evaluation, direction for the prospect. The prospect must reach the conclusion themselves. They must feel comfortable with that direction. Sales is emotional sequencing and not information transfer. There is information that needs to be transferred throughout it, but it's predominantly emotional sequencing and understanding how do you actually go through that story arc of a conversation that allows for them to make the best decision possible for themselves. And no, there are multiple different types of decisions. And the reality is that each one of those different things are important, that you have to have an understanding that those are the potential outcomes. And you're not trying to guide the decision of where they're going. You're trying to actually allow for them to feel comfortable in the decision that they're ultimately making and knowing that those are ultimately possible. So here's the thing. The emotional structure of the high converting call is going to fall into essentially 3 different categories. You've got the background, current circumstance, the goals, where they want to go, and then the challenges of all the things that they've tried. If one is skipped, the call is going to feel flat and the deal is going to stall. You need to hit each one of those, and it's vital that you actually go through them in a reasonable amount of detail. So let's start with the background and exactly what it is that we're doing. We're looking to understand their current circumstance. Where are they currently sitting? Their operational reality. You want to get specific. You want to get numbers. You want to get frequency. You want to get systems. And you want to move away from the vague. You want to get to fully measurable. And at this point, you're staying neutral. You're getting curious. You're just wanting to have an understanding. And so question 1, you want to understand, where are you right now? And that could be revenue, that could be leads. Make it measurable, not opinions. You want facts, true bona fide facts, black and white, numbers, measurable detail of exactly where they are. Question 2, how long has that been the case? So time frame creates weight. The duration of the time that they've been in a specific place actually allows for them to understand the actual risk profile of actually continuing to do things the same, and that being in that same place is an inevitability if they don't actually do something differently. And largely for you, also understanding the longer that they've been in a place, the greater the motivation they actually have to change. It moves for them to the surface, the seriousness for them of exactly how important it actually is for them. Here's the thing. Within the background, you're actually doing a couple things. When you're starting to put things into the context of real bona fide numbers, you're actually starting to establish more authority, being able to allow for you to be the diagnoser and actually having clarity as to what's going on. Once we have those informations, we can now go on to the next piece. But question 3, where do you want to be? And again, numbers driven, be a specific outcome. Where do you want to be with revenue? Where do you want to be with leads? Where do you want to be with brand recall? Where do you want to be with total case volume? Where do you want to be with this specific thing that is in contrast to where they're currently standing from a background perspective? And you want to remove the vague answers. And if they are not sure what that is, it becomes very difficult for you to actually put a plan together. And you're gonna need to actually be able to pull it out. And maybe you give them some direction of like, here's what's actually reasonable. What happens a lot here, they have some kind of understanding. It's vital that you actually get there. If you don't get here, you are in a losing battle. Just bluntly, you're in a losing battle. And frankly, so are they. Then you want to know, why is this important right now? Why does this actually have an importance to what's going on? And there's the timing driver, right? Like, what exactly is that timing trigger for them of, hey, in order for us to be able to get into this next round of funding, in order for us to be able to reduce our cost of goods, in order for us to be able to make this next hire, in order for me to be able to do X, Y, and Z, that allows for you to convert that information into an urgency piece of like, now they're able to admit to themselves as well as to you of exactly why they need to make this change. Making sure ultimately, here's the thing that we want them to actually understand now is, here I am now, here's where I want to go, and there's this gap in between that allows for them to fully understand how far of a leap is it and what exactly is reasonable and possible. Like, how achievable is this thing and how much help and assistance am I going to need? But here's the actual important piece here is that they need to admit to themselves, not necessarily to you, but they need to be able to admit to themselves that they need support here, and then ultimately understand how important is this to them. without applying pressure. They are articulating it to you. You're not trying to put in urgency and false urgency, which a lot of people try to do, but the actual true urgency that they feel without applying pressure. Here is a key important piece. Now we're going to talk about the challenges. What have they tried? What hasn't worked? What has been preventing success? What are the blockers in their way? What is the cost of staying the same? Of what's actually going on? And you want to get specific examples. You want to understand exactly what is the context of that specific problem and exactly how that manifested, whether that's financial, whether that's strategic, what's actually going on, what are the consequences of it. So very simple question 5 is, what have you tried? What have you tried to do go from X to Y? What have you tried with regard to this specific tactic? What have you tried in specifics to this specific item? And here's the key. It actually allows for you to understand the effort that they've actually put into solving this problem. And then another thing that you want to be able to do is, what's preventing you from getting there on your own? Question 6. It's that allows for them to actually identify the constraint that they actually do need support here, and creates a need and invites ownership of someone else into this. Really important component that allows for you to be able to meaningfully manage this appropriately and be able to drive this self-awareness for them that they need support and that they are actually motivated to make this change and that the time is now to do so. And having a clear understanding of the cost of inaction. They need to see it very clearly to themselves of exactly what happens if they don't do it. And the reality is, throughout this conversation, what you're doing is you're positioning the agency as the bridge, not a persuader. Here's the process by which we actually follow. Here's an example of something that we've ultimately done. Here's a way that we see this playing out. Here's why the thing that you did didn't work. Here's what you could do differently to allow for it to function. Here's how you should be looking at this differently, just allowing for these like slight reframes for them that allows for them to feel comfortable, one, in your experience, because you've done this before, assuming that you have. Don't lie or make anything up, but just allowing for you to be able to do this meaningfully. And then finally, you're going to create a recap and just making sure that you're going to get confirmation. So here's your current state, here's your goal, here's the constraint, and here's the reality. And you want to allow for you to, you want to get confirmation for them, actually secure verbal agreement that this is where they're looking to go. And then actually start to then talk about what that solution is, which is ultimately the actual close the proposal component of it, where the prospect is going to allow for them to fully admit to themselves that this is the direction that they want to go. What is referred to as conceptual buy-in here. They are conceptually bought into the direction that you are the agency, that here's the problem, here's the thing that we want, here's the solution, and now I'm conceptually bought into the direction. And why this ultimately works is that people, first, they have to have several components of different belief systems. They have to believe that they can accomplish it. They have to believe that the solution is actually possible, and they have to understand that they actually need the solution and that you have the expertise to do so. And the story arc of what you're actually doing is allowing for them to articulate to themselves and to you what's actually happening. And it actually allows for you to be able to create momentum towards solving the problem. It surfaces the urgency, it surfaces what they've tried, it surfaces the goals, it surfaces the why, it surfaces the constraint in time, it surfaces the urgency, and allows for them to fully understand exactly what's going on. Now, once you've started running sales calls like this, something interesting happens. You'll hear fewer objections because prospects feel understood, but the objections you do hear are going to be the ones that actually matter, the ones that are core to them. That could be timing, that could be decision makers, that could be fear that they have in their own success. And that's why you should watch this next video